All right, so we are halfway through the 8 week challenge. Interesting week this week. Let's jump in. So, as you see, finished up last week at 94.4 kgs and have finished this week at 95.1. So, there's been a slight weight gain over the week. We'll get into a couple of reasons as to why that might be the case. But if we just look at the body weight across the week, you'll see it's gone 943, 945, 5, 5, and then 951, 955. 951. So there was a little bit of an increase from 0.5 to 0.1. That would be, so I'm a little bit confused now. That would be on Monday. That would be over the weekend. No, sorry, that would be Tuesday. So yeah, a little bit of fluctuation there. Not something I'm too concerned about in terms of gaining body fat or anything like that. I think I'm still probably for the whole week in a slight deficit. And you can kind of see with the results from last week, where getting down from, at one stage last week it was 96 all the way down to 94.4. So I think the body weight is probably sitting around that mid 90s, that mid 94. But there's a few things that have been off this week, so maybe that'll change over the next week or so. Blood pressure, haven't had much of an opportunity to do the blood pressure testing throughout the week, or the second testing. I've done all the morning ones, not too much, but one of the things that you will notice about this week is the physical activity here. So the strength training, pretty consistent. Those gym sessions, mid-20s to kind of 30 minutes, that's only counting from the first working set to the last working set. But what you will notice is pretty much no cardio this week. The reason for that, the swimming that I have been doing, the creek, we had some big storms, or have been having some big storms up here, and the creek's literally just gone brown. So it's all runoff and all that kind of lovely stuff. So you can't go swimming in there, which is a little bit disappointing. So it has happened before, and it kind of lasted for a day or two, so I thought that would be the case now. So I've just kind of been waiting for it to clear up, and it's been over a week now. So Tuesday last week was the last time that I jumped in there. So that's the reason that the cardio is down this week. Look, it should have had a contingency in plan, a contingency place in plan. But didn't, just kind of thought it would get better. So that's one of the downsides about not having that plan in place. Have done a little bit of extra walking. I don't count the walking as cardio because it gets reflected in the steps here. But again, the steps, nothing too drastic of an increase over the week as well. So overall, the physical activity, if we jump across the averages here, where are we? Has dropped significantly. So you can see week 1, 227, week 2, 250, 202, 139. So that's down by 63 minutes of physical activity, all cardio, that's dropped this week. So it's looking pretty clear today. So fingers crossed I'll be back in there. So the start of week 5 will be nice and strong. But, it does show the need to have those contingencies and those backups in place when you maybe can't get to the gym or you can't do the training that you were planning on doing, and having a backup plan or, default you can kind of just jump into. So a little bit disappointing on that front. If we jump across to calories in, food intake across the week, that's been a little bit higher as well, coming in at 2534. Now if we jump across here, now we've got all this data, it's starting to get a little bit confusing. Slight increase over here. Yesterday 2680, the day before 2775, 2516. The last 3 days have all been above the target intake. Things have been pretty busy. Had a few things pop up, but it's still not an excuse. It's one of those things, it's just reasons that things happen. You either deal with them well or you maybe don't. And I think when you are on a kind of strict nutrition plan, it just kind of shows that just those little deviations, those extra maybe 200, 250 calories really do add up. So, 250 calories is basically that deficit, that increase into the deficit there, or surplus into the deficit, and then here as well. So, everything's back on plan now. So the next week should be quite interesting. Going across the macros, protein has been a focus. I've been bumping that up. We'll look at the averages here. have made an effort to bump the protein up to around 200 grams. That was actually spot on this week, which is really good. You can see that's a 64 gram per day increase from the first week. Now, the protein was something that I started deliberately low because at 2,500 calories, one of the variables that I wanted to manipulate and kind of demonstrate being manipulated was increasing protein intake while keeping the caloric intake exactly the same. So it's been 2,500 the whole way through. As you can see, just under, just over, pretty much spot on, and just over has been the averages for the week. So there has been no move on caloric intake, and we're 4 weeks in. This week might not have been a great week in terms of weight change, but I think overall everything's going pretty well. The fat intake has dropped a little bit as well. That's kind of reflected the protein intake. It does take up calories, so the carbs and the fat needs to drop. You can see here 95, 96, 237, 96, here 221, 82. So that has been replaced. Now, the other thing about this week, it's actually been the highest week of sodium intake as well. So that's potentially a reason to be retaining a little bit more fluid, which might explain the fluctuations in weight, and also the carbohydrate intake as well. There might be a little bit more energy or glycogen that's being stored, the stored carbohydrates, because for every gram of glycogen, you've got 3 grams of water that come along with that as well. So that can significantly increase weight as well. Not significantly increase overall body weight, but it can make a significant impact when you're tracking loss. So 300 grams gained is not a big impact on your body weight, but if you're tracking the loss and you're looking for maybe a 500 to 800 gram loss that week, a gain of 300 grams is going to be significant there. So that potentially explains that. Maybe a little bit of extra recovery from the lack of cardio as well, and all those factors coming together. That's probably why I'm not too concerned about I think the deficit's still working. I think the fat loss is still occurring. Definitely feeling and looking noticeably leaner, which is a good thing, particularly some veins that are maybe popping out that weren't before. So overall, not too worried about it. Over the next 4 weeks, I mean, it does leave a pretty big challenge of 4.8 kgs in 4 weeks. That's 1.2 kilos per week. There is room to make adjustments. I think the variable this week will be boosting the cardio back up, making sure that's up around that 2 hours for the whole week, 20 minutes per day, or average of roughly 20 minutes per day. That should make a difference. The next variable will be decreasing the energy intake as well. So what we'll be looking at is a 10% reduction in energy intake, which would take us from 2,500 to 2,250, basically. So that's pretty simple. And protein will stay the same. So the drop will come from carbs and fats. In my case, because I'm trying to keep the carbs around that 200, which there's a little bit of tightening up that can be done there, it will predominantly come from fats. So the macros would look something like 200 protein, 200 carbs, 1,600, and then about 70 grams of fat or something like that. So the fat will have a little bit of a decrease on what we're going on now. So we'll see how that goes. I will kick off those macros or that new energy target from today. Ideally, it would be just bring the exercise back in and then kind of make the alterations after that. But because this is a little bit time sensitive, there's 4 weeks to go, I think it's going to be both at the same time. So the one downside of that is that it's impossible to tell which variable kind of makes the difference, whether it's the decrease in energy intake or the increase or the return to the level of cardio that I've been aiming for the whole time. But that's all right. There's a goal that we're working towards and a 4 week time frame. So I think it's worthwhile doing. Quickly on that, when working to a time frame, a great example is a wedding day or something like that. Often you want to get to the target a couple of weeks beforehand. You don't want to be stressing about body weight in the week leading into a wedding or something like that. So we'll set the goal as kind of 2 weeks forward. So getting towards the halfway or the second half of a program or something like that, there might be a little bit more aggression than is maybe needed or that is absolutely essential to, have you looking good on the wedding day. But if we can go a little bit harder at that point, it'll take up a little bit less of that mental energy as you get closer and closer to the wedding, take out those nerves and things like that. So I guess it's a slightly similar approach to what's happening here. I don't want to get to 2 weeks to go, 3 kilos has to be lost in 2 weeks or something like that. So we'll ramp things up a little bit now. That is everything to run through now. There is work to be done. There's no doubt about that. It was probably not a bad time to share the email on Wednesday, talking about bad days and things like that. Obviously, everyone has them. And, ideally, you want to be disciplined and stick to the plan on those bad days, and they just become average days where they don't really become too bad for your nutrition or something like that. But there are definitely times where you kind of deviate, or even looking at the carbohydrate intake again here. That's something that I've been wanting to focus on, getting that down to that 200 grams per day, and it, to be honest, hasn't been prioritized and really emphasized over the course of the week. And the result is that you see it up there at 221, which it's a 10% increase, which it's 80 calories. Like it's not the biggest deal, and the overall energy intake is still controlled, although slightly over as well. But it's just one of those things that if you're setting those goals, you want to be sticking to them. So plenty of work to be done over the next week. I will check in with another video in a fortnight, and hopefully that weight will be sitting at, let's say, 92.8. That is the goal. I will talk to you all soon.